the fuck are you people doing here? I thought there'd be like 5 people at my talk. Don't you know you're supposed to be out drinking at this point? You're doing it wrong. Oh, okay, this woman's doing it right. All right, you're awesome. Did you bring extra for everybody? No. Nice. Who's got the flask? Because I have not had a drink yet. So hi, I'm Robert Wagner, and we're going to be talking about hacking and defending APIs. Who was at my talk earlier today? Good, nobody? Oh man, no, you're going to be bored. No, this will be a bit different. So just a quick introduction, Robert Wagner, Mr. Minion on the Twitters. I'm an advisory CISO, but started off my career as a third shift SOC analyst for some financials in Chicago. Worked my way through engineer and architect. I'm a co-founder of Hack for Kids, which is actually going to be here at the con as well. Tomorrow we're going to have a whole kids track set up upstairs. You're not actually allowed in if you don't have a kid, so don't try and social engineer your way into that because it's in bad taste. But we teach kids about internet safety, security, and ethics. I'm also on the board of my ISSA chapter in Chicago. I love dogs, motorcycles, and scuba, as you can see from some of the pictures. In fact, for 14 years, I had this dog right here who rode motorcycle with me since he was about 6 months old. He passed away. What's that? Rocket, yes, that was Rocket. Thank you, John. I'm also an honorary wolf pup dad, so down in Lafayette, Indiana, there's a wolf research park, and I actually got to be wolf daddy for a day. As you can tell, I washed with bacon soap that day. That's me. Let's get a little bit about this talk. So this talk was actually a collaboration with this guy, Corey Ball. Corey's amazing. He wrote the first book on hacking APIs, and this only came out like a year ago. And he is amazing at what he does. So professional pen tester, but he's billable, so he couldn't be here for this talk, unfortunately. He and I were talking together about how we could turn what he had done into an interesting talk, but for us to collaborate, we took a red versus blue approach to it. So he knows how to hack into it. My whole goal with the blue side of this, because I've been blue team my whole career, was to see how many ways I could fuck with his attacks, basically. So that's what this is going to be about. Corey's actually set up a security training for APIs as well at, API University. So check that out. That's free. And it's good content. But let's get into it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be walking through the API Top 10, talking about how Corey regularly breaks into systems via the APIs or abuses the APIs for information. And I'll be talking about how I'd try to counter some of his attacks. So let's get right into API 1. This is the most prevalent API vulnerability, I guess we'd call it a vulnerability, out there, and by a significant amount. Which is why it's listed as number 1 on OWASP's API Top 10. And it's not rocket science, right? So when Corey goes and he tries to pen test an API, first thing he's going to do is get an intercepting proxy like Burp or one of the others, and he's just going to enumerate. He's going to look for all of the API endpoints, so that's your GET requests and POST requests, to those various paths. And then all he does is come around a second time and sees what he can fuck with. So can I get to resources that I should not be able to get to if I simply replace the get API resource 1 with 5 instead of 1 and get access to resources that normally wouldn't be available? And yeah, that's all it takes to do this hack, and it is the most prevalent vulnerability out on the web today. And it is all over the place. So simply by basically fuzzing the values, really, of a path, he's able to often get to resources that really he shouldn't be able to get to as the user that he's authenticated as. Gets and posts are usually the most common methods that he'll use to try and get this. And this is usually caused by the fact that once you're authenticated and if you're authenticated at all, and that's a whole other problem. But once you're authenticated, a lot of systems will just simply let you get to any resource without authorization to that resource. So to defend against this, a lot of this is block and tackle. It's stuff we should know as security professionals already. It's stuff we should know after doing 20 fucking years of web app vulnerabilities. You'd think that this shit wouldn't exist, but it's the frickin' Wild West out there. Every mistake we made in the web app space is right back there. In fact, if you're just getting into pen testing, this is the place to go. You can be a frickin' rock star in 2 days just by going after APIs. There's often bounties on HackerOne and some of the other bounty programs. So not only can you be a rock star, you can get some side hustle money replacing 1 with 5. Oh my fucking God. So to defend against this, it's the same stuff we've been talking about for God knows how long. Create an access policy. You should have one at this point anyway. Fuck. Design access the same way domain admins design access, right? You're going to have groups, and you're going to put people in the groups and apply authorization instead of access to those groups to limit what a user can get access to. And then you're going to need to go all the way down and make sure that that access is based literally on the attribute. And then deny everything else. Where have we heard deny everything else? God damn it, right? This is firewall shit all over again. So just deny everything except what's explicitly allowed. And this will stop most of these attacks right in their tracks. This just doesn't mean you can get away with not having a gateway, though. You still need a gateway. Once you're past the gateway, it's easy to implement a BOLA attack, but that doesn't relieve you of the duty of putting one in place. You do still need to get one, so don't think that you can do without. And then there's plenty of guides on this, right? OWASP ASVS has a guide, NIST has a guide on proper implementation of authorization, which is all it takes to stop this attack. Great, so broken authentication, that's like our gateway stuff, but too often we don't even have authentication to the API in the first place, or it's some sort of bullshit thing where if the front end, though, the web app itself will pretend that you had to like do some stuff, but the moment you just try and access the API, you go on right on through. So that kind of lack of authentication or weak authentication, and then other shit, again, we've known forever. People rolling their own auth. Oh my God, it's like rolling your own encryption. Don't fucking do that. There are libraries out there that are mature, robust, open source often, so they've been checked. Don't roll your own freaking auth, for God's sakes. And then even just stupid things like really weak JSON web tokens. I mean, there's literally a setting for the encryption on a JWT that is none. So yeah, there's just nothing there at all. So exposed private keys, the typical stupid user tricks that we're used to are also the bane of your existence in this attack. Again, no rocket science here, right? This is all about abusing authentication flows. And think about your authentication flows. And when we're talking about flows, we have to think about things like the I forgot my password authentication flow. Could that be abused by the API? Oftentimes it can. So you have to look out for that kind of stuff as well. Jesus fucking Christ, get multi-factor already. Why are we still even thinking about this? It is probably the biggest bang for your buck as far as security goes. It doesn't solve just this sin. It solves a billion sins. Get it, deploy it everywhere. Don't be stupid. Don't go, oh yeah, we'll just give it to like the admins and the execs. That doesn't work. Attackers will usually find out who doesn't require it, and they'll get through. So you got to deploy it to everybody, and I'm like, even your third-party vendors, anybody that touches your shit should have to do multi-factor authentication. Don't roll your own auth. We've talked about that. People will sometimes think that OAuth or something like that will prevent that. It doesn't prevent that. The easiest way to check whether or not you still have this issue is just simply brute force. And I mean, it's simple, stupid brute forcing. And you can launch any tool that brute forces authentication, and you can totally check this on your own. Excessive data exposure. So it's very easy in API vulnerabilities and talking about them to blame developers for doing lazy-ass shit like we're going to talk about here. It's not the developer's fault. Most of the time, they don't really know what they're doing is a problem. And the second problem is often they're just copying, whether it's a library or a cut and paste of code, whatever. They don't know that these type of problems exist out there. As InfoSec professionals in this space, if you're working with the devs or DevSecOps, your job is to be an empathetic guide, to show them how their APIs can be abused. You should see the first time a developer sees what happens when you do some SQL injection against his or her API. They go, fuck, I didn't know you could, oh my God, shit. It's very eye-opening for them, but it also gets them on your side, right? You show them a little bit about how their APIs can be abused, and all of a sudden, they're a willing ally in this fight. So anyway, with excessive data exposure, it's dumbass things like providing all of the information about an account when maybe, in this example, we're only asking for just the account name, right? So Cloud plus Strife should come back and maybe what the privilege level is. But instead, the dev has set it up so that it returns everything, including the fact that there's a privilege for super admin and this account might have it, and whether or not two-factor authentication is even asked for. So tons and tons of target information accessible. Another great example was there was a security app for security webcams. And when the app was set up, if you did it through the web app portal, it would give you the feed from the camera you asked for. But if you hit it up through the API, it'd just give you all of them. It'd be like, yeah, which one? Here's all the webcams. Just pick one. That's a problem with filtering happening at the client side, which again, we fucking learned this with web apps. I don't know why we're dealing with this again, but it's going to come back and haunt us in several of these vulnerabilities. So defense against this, so watch those streams, right? OWASP recommends not requiring clients to filter data. We all know this, right? This is not something new to us. And yet, APIs are being set up in the same stupid way that we were setting up web apps 25 years ago. We should never, ever allow the client to be responsible for the security of the data. Simple as that. Check for other things like sequential IDs, right, because they're easy to guess. Look for things where this might even show up in the logs sometimes, where if you're seeing like an excessive amount of data being returned for what looks like simple requests, you might be able to pick it up there. And again, check apply least privilege again. It's just like any other data access as far as that goes. And if you do have PII, that needs to become part of that whole creating a policy around your data and applying that policy so that the devs know that this is PII data. They can't be exposing anything other than it was requested and authorized to deliver by the endpoint. So lack of resources and rate limiting, this particular attack usually amounts to some sort of denial of service to the service itself. And it's important because a lot of newer apps actually use rate limiting to monetize the product itself, right? So it'll only deliver you so much data over a certain period of time or something like that. And of course, if you can bypass that rate limiting, you can get tons of resources for free, and the company loses money, and then you get laid off. Not that that would happen anytime soon, right? So this cuts into the business aspect, and by preventing it from happening, you're actually helping the bottom line. And I would even look for shit like this. If you find it, actually measure that and show how much money you're saving the company by preventing that from happening once you've found the flaw. So a typical attack will be basically if you can make a request like the one up here ending in 9001, what Hori will do when he's trying to abuse it is set up just a script or an automation that will just make tons of requests, and he'll even be clever enough to watch for things like if all of a sudden there's like maybe a rate limited at 100, he'll just set the script to make 99 requests and then wait a minute and then send 99 more requests and 99 more requests, and he's still able to abuse the API itself. Sometimes even things as simple as case switching. So is that here in the example? No. So case switching, he doesn't have case switching, but what he's doing on this last example here is just using a little bit of obfuscation to call 9001, but then add a little something else that the API is just going to disregard and chop off, and he still gets his request through, but the rate limiting didn't actually kick in. Defensive throttling is definitely going to be your friend here. Reach out to the site reliability people. They know all about rate limiting, and they can be your best friends here. There are multiple ways to enforce rate limiting. Even Docker has built-in limiting functions, so this is easy to defend against. It'll show up again in your logs, and we're going to hear about logs a lot in this. This is a great place to look for it, and it's as simple as looking for standard deviation. And just about any logging tool these days will easily allow you to apply standard dev math to the amount of logs that are coming through. So if all of a sudden your regular API requests are hitting this particular amount of data being sent, standard deviation of maybe 2 or something like that should pop that out really quickly. And if you want to take it a little further, if you want to apply maybe some algorithms, SciPy or our project are great places, free places to start applying some more advanced algorithms to that log volume and speed and frequency. Broken function level authorization, or Baffle, very similar to BOLA, but instead of privileged access or authorization, this is more about privileged actions. It's like being able to do admin actions, make certain requests, or send certain commands that you shouldn't be based on who you're authorized in as. So in Corey's example here, we'll see a valid request where he's basically sending in this little request here, and just basically asking for information based on user A's token. The attack then will be him logging in as user B, replacing the token, just simple replacement, with user A's, and seeing if he can still get that information from the other user. While BOLA allows you to request info about an account, Baffle is much more serious because it would let you do things in a financial app, for instance, like transfer money that you shouldn't be able to transfer, right? You'd actually be able to access user B's money as user A and make a transfer then to another account. So much more serious ramifications if this one exists. Defending against it will be very similar to our defenses in BOLA. Basically, we're looking at an imposter attack right here, where you're pretending to be another user simply by substituting a token in. And again, enforcing access on the server side is one of the best defenses against this. If you're allowing the client to enforce your security, someone's going to be able to fuck with that pretty easily. Logs for the win. Again here, every logging tool out there has the concept of a rare function when applying it to the data. So look for pairs that just shouldn't have happened. User A's account will always be using user A's token. If you see a rare value where user A has user B's token, that'll stand out like a sore thumb just by applying the concept of rare to those logs. If you're not going to prevent the attack, obviously, in that point, but you'll at least find out if that kind of abuse is happening. All right, how are we doing on time? Good. All right, mass assignment is, again, something that happens when devs are trying to move fast. And we can't blame them for moving fast. The pressure on them is there all the time, right? Get product out, get product up, get product out. I would have hoped with CI/CD and stuff like that, though, we'd be avoiding some of these problems at least, right? Back when it was web apps, one of the problems we had, you seem like fucking waterfall or something like that, is that by the time you found the vulnerability in the app, the dev was on to the next project. But at this point with CI/CD, we can actually bake a lot of these tests right into their automated processes. There's so many things you can check for simply by using Postman to see if many of these things exist. So, and then there's commercial tools out there that will test for many of them as well. One of the things that won't is your standard vulnerability scanner, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But mass assignment basically is, again, where you're allowing things to be accessed through an HTTP call through the request parameters and make changes to variables. And this is going to cause some harm. It's usually found in the registration process, but it will, again, it's, the devs set this up to really be able to quickly register an account or something like that. But what's happening is they're not making any checks. So if you come in there and you see that the regular registration process lets you register as user, and you see that you can just replace user with admin, it'll just let you, because it was like, oh yeah, okay, I see you're trying to create a new account, and you said that the parameter is admin, and you're just passing that parameter right through the HTTP, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're admin, that's cool. The real problem we have here is that it's often all over the place in development environments, so the easiest way to get rid of it is to disable mass assignment. Unfortunately, that's if it's been going on for a long time, you're going to break a ton of apps. Yeah, so a lot of times you can't take that chance with production on shutting this down. So you're going to have to set up a long-ass project to weed them all out one by one. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for ways to actually restrict that and change the way that variables get set through the HTTP requests. It's going to take a long time. Start with your most valuable apps first, but there's not an easy solution for this one. You might be able to get away with some checks at the gateway. That might allow some of these attacks to be stopped, but this is not an easy one to solve for if it's prevalent in the environment. So API 7, this is basically the security catch-all for all the stupid shit that could go wrong. And as we know, in just regular network and app security, something will always go wrong. I mean, even if it's something stupid like you forgot to patch shit, right? So it's everything from directory traversal, which, oh my God, I mean, it's like we went back to 1998, right? These are stupid things that we should have learned to stop by now. They exist again in the API space. But it's this and more. So how do we defend against anything that possibly could go wrong, right? How do we defend against Murphy's Law? And it's by focusing on being resilient, right? We have to be resilient. We have to be ready for forgetting to fucking patch something, or not applying certain parameters or even authorization to stuff. Things will invariably go wrong. What matters here is how quickly you can recover from it. And the way to recover is to have change management. We all hate it, but it's got to be there. We have to have policies in place, frameworks in place, and then enforce those things. And one by one, knock them out. And when things do go bad, make sure that you have the right things in place, whether it's backups, whether it's an incident response team, something that can handle the things that will go wrong that will. It's the same stuff we've been dealing with. All right, yeah. Is this fucked up or what? Injection is still a problem in APIs. I mean, we know it's a problem in web apps, but we've been getting a little bit of traction, right? We've been getting a little bit ways with showing web app developers on how to stop that. the problem is so prevalent, it's ridiculous. It's like nobody taught this new generation of developers that this can happen. And again, sometimes all it takes is just showing them what injection looks like on their app and how easy it is to inject against it. So I don't think I have to explain to you how injection works, right? But it's all over the place, and it's not just SQL injection. It's XXS, NoSQL injection, the whole suite of stupid shit. And yeah, this should not still be the bane of our existence. It absolutely is. And the solutions for this are well documented. Sanitize, validate, filter. That's how you prevent injection. It's not rocket science. It's not always easy. Sometimes we can create libraries of good code for them to copy into functions and stuff like that, but even knowing when and where they should use it is sometimes not evident to developers, so you're going to have to train them, and you're going to have to test early and often. But this is easy check. Right during build, right when they commit the code, you can run a Postman script that'll check to see if injection's possible. Super easy to write, and you can probably copy a lot of the injections right from the web app injections that we've been doing forever. So improper assets management. This is all about, shamans that keep everything that's going on with the development in their head, and it's not been documented. So it's things like the new API, version of an API like V3 gets released. There was a vulnerability in version 1, but it was never removed from wherever it's being hosted. So it's still there, and it's still attackable. Nobody has blocked or turned off that path or deleted the code, so an attacker can still perfectly leverage the old API, which is still responding to all its requests. So if they allow access to those unsupported versions, the worst thing is that a lot of this is documented for the attackers right in GitHub. I don't know why we still have problems getting developers to actually comment in their code, but they will put shit in GitHub that says, oh yeah, this version was broken, it had this vulnerability, we fixed it, and use version 2 now. So you can find a lot of shit right out in GitHub to make for your recon to actually find targets this way, and it happens a lot. So this comes back to us knowing where our crown jewels are, right? One of the first things, and I see this so often in organizations, you have to document your APIs, and it's still not getting done, just like with other code, right? The sad thing here again is there's automated tools that will document your APIs. This is not difficult at all. You just load it up in the tool. It'll document what you need and get everything ready for you. And that's useful too when you're going to start creating gateways in Postman and stuff like that. So it should be part of the policy that all API apps are documented this way, but it doesn't get done. If you don't, I've even been in places where the security team is not even sure where all the APIs are. They don't know if they know all of the APIs that exist. Now, there's a great tool out there called Kite Runner that will help you enumerate them. Katie Paxton-Fear, who's an awesome researcher in this space, has a whole tutorial on how to write Kite Runner just to enumerate your APIs. So at least you don't have rogue developers just publishing APIs all over the place that you don't know about. Running that will at least find, so long as you know where to run it. I mean, if they're really doing some wild-ass shit and hosting their own stuff, that's going to be tougher, but there's ways to find out. Change control, again, we all love change control. CI/CD tools automate the shit out of this. So, what a surprise that API 10 is just insufficient logging. That never happens in regular security space, right? The rest of IT has just gotten so, no, they have not. So lack of Logging and monitoring is bad. The sad thing again here is, again, since so much of this is cloud hosted, the logging is right there. I mean, it's a fucking checkbox. Log the shit, right? And yet we still see over and over again people not logging their shit. So log your shit, because if you don't, I'm going to come to where you work, or where they work, or whoever works, and I'm going to make them walk all over the Legos in this presentation barefoot. So, thank you. Yeah, log your fucking shit. So do be careful. There is the danger of false negatives. I've heard many a time people were like, yeah, well, we ran Nessus against it, and it didn't come up with any of those web apps. Yeah, because it's not a fucking web app. So don't run Qualys or Nessus or any of the standard vulnerability tools. You're not likely to get the results you want. In fact, that's exactly what happened to the USPS a few years ago. You can actually read this report that was published. But in the report itself, it's like, hey, yeah, overall, we did really good. There's like no vulnerabilities here. And how it was like a couple weeks later, it was up in Krebs that 60 million users had their information exposed. And it was the Ebola one. So once you are authenticated, USPS, as many of you know, has an app now where you can see what mail is coming to you, right? You can log in, and they've scanned your mail, and you can see what's coming. Well, once you authenticated, you could put in any address you wanted and get the information of whoever lived there. And if you lived in an apartment and you put in the apartment's address, you get the information of every person that lived in that apartment building. Yeah, it would just go, fuck yeah, here, I'll give it all to you, no problem. Let's see. So yeah, the standard tools don't work really well here. But the cool thing is that there's a number of, just like Juice Shop for web apps, there's a number of good vulnerable APIs out there, and WebGoat and some of those others that were for web apps. There's good ones for APIs as well. So you can load up something like Crappy and run your vulnerability scanner against it. If people aren't believing you that it's not going to help, you just launch that up. There's some that are web hosted. You run your vuln scanner against Crappy, and in most cases, you will get results like no vulnerabilities. And this Crappy is vulnerable as hell. I mean, it's got all of the vulnerabilities in the top 10, except for, I don't know if they're logging or not. It's hard to tell. But the majority of the vulns are there. Most scanners will come back with negative results. Even Burp Suite. So Burp Suite will pick up on some stuff, but it won't pick up on everything unless you're making custom checks. But there are API-specific tools. OWASPZap is a very cool free one from the OWASP folks, and it will pick up the majority of the vulnerabilities. The only one that's really tough, and it's kind of a combination of these vulnerabilities, is where it's a logic problem. And logic problems are the same things like, remember when in Amazon, if you like put in a negative number, you'd get like, you could get like free shit or something like that. It's the same kind of business logic that really requires a manual check. But for the stuff in the OWASP Top Ten, OWASPZap does a good job. There's another one, I think it's called StackHawk. I don't think it's free, but it's not very expensive. So get people who know how to do pen testing. Oh, wait. How much time do I have? I thought I was way ahead of time. All right, sorry I talked so fast to this because we're getting very close to the end. But actually having someone who knows how to abuse APIs is really going to be then your second line of checks, right? The automated apps will find a lot of stuff. Someone who really knows how to abuse APIs will be able to take it that much further. But run the automated ones first. You can do that yourself. You don't need to pay a pen tester to just do those basic checks. Bug bounty programs, which we mentioned a little bit, these are a great way to get lots and lots of people looking at your APIs for not a whole lot of money, and you can get continuous checks going. It's also, again, a great way if you're interested in getting into the field to make a bit of a name for yourself and some money. There's plenty of bounties on APIs out on HackerOne and stuff like that. So you can even just use it for practice. But why not get the money, right? So check that out. Using both the professional pen testing along with bug bounty programs is a great way to approach the problem. Yeah, I think you all know most of this stuff, right? It's the business logic that I said that's the hardest one to check for. Here's actually several API vulnerable APIs that you can test against. I think crappy right now is probably the best one, but these others will work as well. So some testing tips. When you're testing the APIs, do it from the standpoint of an authorized user, right? You're not going to get as many results if you're not authorizing to the API. So certainly check unauthorized too, but make sure you can do the tests as an authorized user. And we know not to trust automated scans to show us everything, but they will show us a lot. And the OWASP API Top 10 is really a good guide. It gives a lot of remediation advice as well as the nuances of the vulnerability itself. So you can use that to start building your testing plan. And then, so I advised Kite Runner, but here's the problem. A lot of times you go, hey, I'm going to scan my environment, and what happens when change management catches wind of it? They're like, no, you're fucking not. Nope, you're not bringing down our production. So I came up with a clever way that you could kind of get around that. So Kite Runner basically uses something called word lists that guesses at the most common beginnings of paths for APIs. The developers tend to, like I said, copy and paste a lot. So paths tend to take on a very similar naming convention as you're naming APIs. So you can actually download the word lists themselves. They're called .kite files. And then just put a sniffer on the wire and sniff all that traffic that's going to your API. And you can use the, all the traffic in general that's coming in. And Kite, if you use something, again, any logging tool to do a comparison, you can compare the word list against the captures that you're doing and find APIs and endpoints that you might not have known about. So kind of a down and dirty way to get past change management, who we all know and love. Right? Change management people? Yeah. No, who we all know and love because they protect us so much. But this is a little way that you can do it if you can't run a scanner for whatever reason on your environment. Deception tactics, which I love in general, even work here. So maybe take a little bit more than your typical honey token as far as creating what you need, but these should work pretty well. So one way is create deceptive comments or responses with links to fake links or fake credentials. So basically, as the API is responding to certain things, as you saw, the API might give indications that there's an admin or that there's an admin path or there's other ways to get stupid user trick stuff like the credentials being there in too much disclosure, right? When you get more information that we asked for. Well, create code to replace your 400s with your code with 400s and 500s that are 400s and 500s with a fake 200 to actually trick the attacker into thinking they're onto something. So they make the API request. You're going to be like, oh, well, they should get a 400, but I'm going to give them this 200, and I'm going to give them something to think that there's an admin path, a way to get to data that they shouldn't be able to get to. Waste their fucking time is basically what you're trying to do here. It'll at the very least frustrate them. And then if you're logging the stuff that nobody should be getting anyway, now you know someone's trying to mess with you as well. So it serves double duty. Oh, shit, that was my last one. Okay, yeah, so I've talked way too fast now, so I can open it up for questions, but that was it. Corey and I's contact information are here, so we're certainly happy to answer more questions, but I can take questions right now if anybody has any. Yeah? MuleSoft, if I remember right, does MuleSoft do gateway stuff as well? Okay, so MuleSoft is not a security tool. You might be able to automate some checks in MuleSoft, but it's not purposely made for this. So yeah, it won't help you there. Other questions? Yeah, no, awesome. So I did a great job. Go drinking. Thank you very much.